few conferences after COVID started. So this one so far is the coolest. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for taking your time. Now we'll get started. Okay. So today I'll be speaking about a value-driven agile coaching or value-driven strategy. So before I get started, so a couple words about myself. So here's a snapshot. China-born Canadian from Montreal, Quebec. Bonjour tout le monde. I live in Stockholm in Sweden. So I'm a certified team coach, enterprise coach, and I coach in organization, and also I run workshops on Scrum, product, agile leadership, and I also mentor passionate agile practitioners. So far, I actually have mentees from 68 countries globally. So I've been serving also on IEEE software board, focusing on agile and large-scale development since 2013. And I have my own consultancy and coaching company, have supported company in automotive, banking, financial services, insurance, and also pharmaceutical industry. So now let's get started. So I'm going to start with a story of mine, explaining how value-driven strategy gradually evolved. And then we're going to take a look at different dimensions of agile coaching competence. Then we're going to make use of agile value-driven strategy as an agile coach. For a few scenarios, you might actually have similar experience of that already. And then we're going to summarize. As a coach, it's important for me to help you to reflect and build some insights out of the session so that you can take that into your coaching world, into your organization. So then let's get started with my story. So part of my experience actually came in from Ericsson, where I worked for close to 21 years. I actually started from Montreal on Boulevard de Carré, then I worked in Ericsson globally. So in 2005, Ericsson started to look for lightweight method to develop product. And then Scrum certainly came in as an option. And then I started to work as a Scrum Master, also combined as a combination of Scrum Master and Product Owner, because I was also a system architect. So we were doing quite well, executing Scrum process. At least that was how I felt back in 2008. So I know almost everything we felt we were doing well. And then what happened was that in 2008, one of the largest legacy product of Ericsson was going through transformation. After 11 months of efforts, there was no business value seen. No happier customer, no better profit, and it was too overwhelming for external consultants at that time. The scale of change, the organization had a bit over 2,200 people in 7 countries plus 2 supplier sites on the same product. So the leadership team decided to use our own internal employee to transform the company. And then they were looking for a candidate who have end-to-end competence globally within Ericsson. So part of my experience, I am very curiosity-driven. So in short, I worked from product management, dealing with customers, and project management, software development, coding, testing, integration, troubleshooting, and all the way to deploy product on customer side. So I was one of the not so many who explored end-to-end, and then I was selected as a candidate. So in 2009, training started, and this was when I started to feel, oh my, there is more to learn. And then what happened is that I actively practice everything I learned from, in terms of product, from the product background. And also I start to feel that, I was working with the development team, with product owner. When leadership team step in, a couple of sentences they said could literally reset all my hard work, all my efforts. So I started to work with leadership team, start with leadership team training and coaching. Then I start to realize the lack of professional coaching skill. So in Ericsson is a great company, so there are many different opportunities for training. So I took leadership training and took some coaching. However, I found it was not sufficient. So I went for professional coaching training. Then I actively practiced in the Agile context. So with teams I was working with product owner, managers. And then I also start to think about strategy when I was coaching. And focusing on getting more and more value, because there were always people, you know, as you very likely have heard, you know, we're different, our product is different, our organization is different, they're always different. So I start to focus more on value, start to think about how can we generate more value at product level, start to work with strategy, HR, and finance, and customer units, and then so things start to become more and more, you know, clear and start to make more and more sense. So, and then I start to feel, you know, I now start to combine my product management background and knowledge, leadership training, organization development training, to practice, to apply, and to learn. And then there's no end to learning. So I start to work more and more with product discovery, and there's design thinking, business model innovation, product innovation. And so over the past few years, I always feel that I'm so excited about the learning that I have, and there is still so much to learn. And then I always reflect on each Agile coaching experience. And I also reflect on the growth of Agile coaches I mentored. And that truly has been a great learning experience. So now in 2020, with COVID, we have landed in a very new landscape. Just like all of you, I have been working virtually. I normally stand up and work. Even now, I'm actually standing as well. So I try to stimulate a little bit more workout for myself. So from time to time, I stand on the balancing board. So as also you can imagine, in my head, I always think about Agile coaching, and I work with Agile coaching, and I stand on the balancing board. And then what happened? I start to feel there's some sort of connection. So in short, but before we move to the connection, so this is what I call, this is a modified Dunning-Kruger effect. And I call this my ASK learning experience. So the A stands for, as you can imagine, Agile, S for Scrum, and K for Kanban. Very likely you have also similar experience. People are using Kanban and they felt, wow, you know, we're doing good. And then, however, they're not even using the basic principles such as limiting work in progress, actively manage their flow. So therefore, that was my story I wanted to share with you. So now, when I start to work on my balancing board, and then I start to reflect on my Agile coaching experience, and then from your experience, I'm very sure you agree with me that Agile coaches can teach about Agile, about Scrum, about Kanban. You can also mentor if people have already theory knowledge and can facilitate to make the framework help organization and teams to improve. You can also use professional coaching skills to help build better awareness and to generate insights and growth. It can also maybe switch to consulting to generate small wins and positive energy, confidence, and trust. So here is how we, Agile coaches, look like. So we constantly evaluate the situation, and then we balance the skill between teaching, mentoring, facilitating, coaching, that's representing professional coaching and consulting to best serve the teams and organization. And then, of course, as you can imagine, here's me, the female coach. So constantly, in short, we as Agile coaches evaluating and then adjusting and rebalancing. However, now here comes a very important question. Organization is such a big system. So what do we do? What do we exactly focus on? So in short, it's like the whole organization is like a huge playground. There are many smaller playgrounds we can play. So sometimes I use playground as the word to use to say which playground do I go into. So where do I apply my teaching, mentoring, facilitating, coaching, and consulting skills? So to make it a bit more visual and in short, now you can see if this is the organization, the sort of cloud or the playground or something you're thinking in your mind. And then there are different things we have to evaluate also. So now think about, as an Agile coach, as a Scrum Master, what are possible playgrounds we can focus on? I'm very sure, many of you will say, well, teams. How the teams are doing. Do they love each other or they hate each other? And where are they in terms of their team development? So therefore, certainly there are different dimensions of team. And some of you most likely will say, product owners, very important role. And then we need to look into product owners. Yeah. And then also there's technical practices as well. So teams, they all love each other, and there's also the important part of improving their technical practice. So I'm very sure you echo my experience. So there are so many leadership team, and they literally reset all our hard work. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit even more than reset. So therefore, certainly we want to think about leadership team as well. Well, teams and product owners are working with the Scrum and the Scrum framework. It doesn't really guarantee the success of the product. So we also have to focus on product successes, product goal, product vision, strategy, product business models, roadmaps, marketing, and sales. And that's also the dimension to look into. And we also know in many particularly large company, international organizations, there is also many other supporting functions. Yeah? So we have human resources that need to support Agile transformation also. For instance, what is the career path for us as an Agile coach? What's the career path for product owner? What type of competence? How do we get evaluated? And so on. So that's human resources. And they can, of course, improve how they work as well. And then there's also supply and sourcing management. So if you could let me just land everything into supporting functions. Yeah. And then what about, for instance, the theme of continuous improvement? I'm very sure some of you working with organization from a helicopter view. So this year I spoke a few times at some other conferences. I use a metaphor of helicopter view. And also last year in Montreal, there was Agile Alliance XP conference. I did a keynote on Agile, Mushroom, and Tibet. So that is also in a way similar theme. It's about lack of continuous improvement, not knowing even who's doing better or worse. So therefore, what if you're the company you're working in, they're just doing military execution of Kanban or Scrum process. From very helicopter view, everything looks good before you zoom in. So therefore, what about continuous improvement? And then what about the organization dimension? And as you can imagine, in the organization dimension, there's organization strategy, there's a structure, there's culture, there's processes. As you see, there's so many possible playgrounds we can work in. So now we know there's sort of a running process in our head, evaluating what to focus on, which playground we go into, and we also know our balancing board metaphor. Agile coaches should continuously evaluate what skills to use. Just like standing on the balancing board, traveling to different places, how do I know where to travel to? And how do I decide what to focus on? And then how do I decide what skills to use? So now let's look into the value-driven strategy in Agile coaching. So let's now look at value-driven strategy in Agile coaching. So certainly that could be also value-driven strategy from organization level as well. So what we will be doing is that we'll be looking into a few scenarios, and I will explain how to use value-driven strategy. And my hope is that you're able to use the strategy and the tool I will introduce, help make a bigger impact in your organization. So now let's look at a scenario. So now we are ready and set. We're standing on our balancing board and we evaluate the context. So here's what we see. So there is an organization with 18 teams working on a single product that has been on the market for over a decade. So now we get a little bit context. However, it's still a little bit rather high level context. We don't see very clearly yet. Now if we zoom in slightly, remember we're standing on our balancing board. So now we are evaluating more. So they have been using Scrum for a couple of years and have not seen any significant improvement in any dimension yet, such as market share has not really increased, and the product market position hasn't really changed. Customer satisfaction, still no change, or profit hasn't really increased either. So then the management team is debating intensively what to do next. So now you're going in with the balancing board, and this is the situation. And then zooming into the situation a little bit more. And then there are a lot of demand from existing customers and also a lot of pressure to deliver. So teams continue working extremely hard to fulfill the commitment a marketing team made to existing customers. So some more information here we have. And then now the question is, what do we do? We're still standing on our balancing board. What do we do? Where do we go? Which playground or maybe playgrounds we want to play in to use our skills to start to really navigate and balance? So here I would like to introduce the tool that helps focus on value-driven strategy and the value-driven Agile coaching card. So this is how the card looks like. I use this card when I mentor coaches, and then I use it, of course, myself as well when I work with my clients. And so if we take a look at the different content in the Agile coaching card, the first part is what are the playgrounds? Please take note that it's plural. So playgrounds to focus on. So as you see, some of them looks very familiar just now. These are the clouds or the playgrounds we were discussing about. And as you also notice, every system is different. You can also add in some specifics that's really just about your organization. For instance, I can put the company board. If I'm working with the board of the company, you can put board in the other column. And then not every Agile coach has access to the board of the company. So in short, you decide what other may mean to you. And then, so that's the playgrounds you want to evaluate. And the second one is, what are the tools and practices? And this is the important part. So you want to think about, and also you have certain domain knowledge. And then you could apply, could think about the context to see what potentially can be helpful. And as you notice, I also highlighted the importance of asking for help if this can be potentially an area for you to grow. So as you know, now everybody can publish a blog, an article. So I have read articles from some coaches and trainers, and that's about, for instance, value stream mapping, even user story slicing, and which was unfortunately not so correct. So therefore, it's very important to consider this. Do I need help? So consciously aware what you know and consciously be honest, be humble with yourself, and think about what type of help you need. We're not Superman, we're not Superwoman. So for instance, I have Sabrina from my team to help me draw the female coach on the balancing board, because that's an area I need quite a bit improvement on. So ask for help. And then the third part is about expected results. So what type of results that can serve as signs, or we can call this leading indicators to achieve where we want to be, the business value. And then the second last is what aspects of business value factors can we improve by working with the tools and practices. And with these expected results, the leading indicator gradually helping us to achieve the business agility we want to improve. And then the last one is, we are standing on our balancing board. So now you want to certainly evaluate, where is this organization right now? The area I'm zooming in right now, where we know how are they doing? Should I go in with teaching and mentoring and maybe professional coaching? I could maybe already, or maybe facilitating and consulting. So that is the different areas of the coaching card. So now, with this short explanation, and now let's try to think about how to make use of this card to help us with the previous scenario that we discussed about. And then remember, we talked about this organization 2 years already, no big improvement, and then work very hard and a lot of requests and so on. So now let's take a look. Yeah. And certainly you will need a little bit more information, but this is just for the conference introduction purpose. So now first, given the fact that looking at this organization, making that assessment, I noticed that this organization literally have been having their heads down. The customers are dragging them left and right, and there was no clear strategy whatsoever. So therefore, I want to focus on product itself. I want to work with sales and marketing. That's another playground I want to work with. And also leadership team. Remember, they can reset our efforts. So therefore, these internal sponsors and so on, certainly very important to work with. And then now let's look at tools and practices. And then given this is also, of course, is a true story behind it. So very complex stakeholder situation, different types of internal stakeholder, plus customers pulling them left and right. And so therefore, stakeholder management will be something important to work with. And then now the question, remember, always evaluate, do I need help? And start to think about it. No, I use it for years. I have my own adapted version of stakeholder map, my 4-dimension stakeholder management. I think I could manage it. Yeah, assume that's the case. And then we move on to the second part. Okay, it's about product strategy and also its alignment. That's really not there based on your initial assessment. So now question is, okay, do I need help? Well, now let's assume that I do, yeah? So therefore, I start to think about who could potentially help me in what area that potentially I need help. Is it about strategy itself, about prioritization itself? For instance, assume that I need help from Bill Smith on product prioritization, that Bill has even his own touch on product weighing concepts to really help company taking lead in the product. And then So then I move into the expected results. So given that, left and right and so on, a very productive marketing team, so therefore a good leading indicator in this case can be one prioritization schema with the help from Bill Smith. And then there will be many new things coming in. And then we want to have a weekly review of incoming requests. And also, given that there are so many customers and so on, we want to also have ad hoc reviews if that's needed. And then we work with this prioritization schema, and then that allow us to prioritize. And then if we could do this, if this is on track, then we should be able to help reduce lead time by certain percentage and by certain date. Because when you want to measure, you want to make sure you already know. You don't want to say, yeah, lead time should be better. Better, unfortunately, it's not sufficient. And then also customer complaint response time reduction, because as you know, with regards to customer satisfaction, a customer complaint is one of the area covers quite a bit weight. So therefore, I want to look at the 50% reduction, and then by this date. And then now finally, okay, if this is the situation and this is the organization, back to our balancing board, you know, feet on the ground, and then 2 years, sense of frustration in the air, I will use consulting and facilitating to generate some positive energy, confidence, and trust, and to allow me to switch to other coaching, agile coaching skills on my balancing board when we start to see signs of progress and some positive momentums. So this is how we could use value-driven agile coaching card for the previous scenario. And then now we have another situation. So if you continue, now we have another coach. So now teams are using the Scrum framework with all Scrum events taking place. But many of you have experienced this, I'm very sure. The theme of continuous improvement is not there. So given that we have another coach that I'm working with, and then so therefore we can evaluate to see who will be working on what is our strategy together. So again, we'll be using the value-driven strategy card. So now, based on his past experience now, so tools, first a playground, because of the fact that teams are not really, you know, the events are just being executed. There is not so much value or continuous improvement. So therefore, based on his past experience, she start to play with development team, product owner, Scrum Master, and don't forget about leadership team. And tools potentially improve Scrum events. So to get out of the full military execution mode for Scrum events, improve its effectiveness, trigger the discussion about impediments. Impediments are not just about what's stopping us, and also what about the part, how can we work better and smarter? And to get true small, smart actions from sprint retrospective and really make that as the engine for improvement. And then, so now Bill, our coach is evaluating, okay, so he's quite familiar with all the Scrum events, have been working with this for a long time. So he decided now to ask for help. And then at organization level, working with leadership team to introduce impediment Kanban board so that it helps raise the awareness of impediments. Hence, impediment will lead to improvement. So now, if I use the example, we're in Agile Tour Montreal, so therefore he decided to ask for help from a very Quebec name, Claude Tremblay. He's going to ask for help from him. And then instead of teaching people about the Scrum events, as we know, right? So therefore, he gradually start to work with all the different playgrounds. So first, by working with them, he hoped to see the leading indicator of impediments or risk at individual team levels. And as we know, some of the impediments, no matter how hard they work, and they need to be brought to organization level, and then require coordination and also decisions at the management team level. So it could be about tools, politics, and so on. So in short, impediment Kanban board is up and running at the leadership team level. So all these two things can be a good sign, can go to indicate, yeah, we're on track. And then in terms of business agility measurement, I know this may not directly lead to business value. However, we know by constantly improving how we work and without working extra hours, working smarter in a smarter way, team productivity improvement by certain percentage, again by certain time. And then now about the coaching, what coaching skills do I use? Again, standing on the board. So instead of teaching people about these events, which he already evaluated, it's better to help them to build the awareness and feel more pain about just executing Scrum events so that they have the motivation to improve. So therefore, he decided to use professional coaching and consulting for the impediment Kanban board part, because we have introduced this board to many organizations and with great successes. So this is how we could use a value-driven agile coaching card for the second scenario. And then one last one. And then so a part of this organization is building a new product, and you just started working there as an agile coach. So then what happened is that, as you know, let's do a helicopter view. So zooming in slightly, teams are working with bi-weekly sprint. Technical quality is good. However, customers are not quite happy. Yeah. So again, there are different playgrounds to focus on in the long run and also short term. And then, so there's always strategy behind. So he started to look into, from short-term perspective, what does he do? So therefore, now using the card, so he decided to work with development team, product owner, and the product, given this context of such a new product, small team. And then based on his experience, he knows that evaluative experiments, or another word, hypothesis-driven development, can be very important in this case. So because we know everything we try to build, and that's we build that, make that decision based on assumptions. So we want to actively prioritize it, evaluate, decide, which one is more important, and then what's the best way to validate. So that's about HDD. And then the expected results as a leading indicator could be all the new features, new functions that are coming in are evaluated to identify all assumptions, and of course prioritize as well. And new functions should be introduced only after validation. And then if we could do that, and the immediate effect will be customer satisfaction is increased. And then also customer will stop complaining. And that's also another indicator we could actively work with. And then here, and then he needs to teach and mentor on this, because first, the team doesn't seem to know about it. He discussed with the team and product owner, everybody's like, what are you talking about? So therefore, teaching and then mentoring, because he knows from his past experience, this requires mindset change as well. It's going to take a little time. So therefore, mentoring can be very helpful to reduce their frustration. And then he decided to go into consulting to generate small wins, relieving some pressures from the customer and getting some relatively happier customers. So that is the application for the other scenario. And then now let's take a look at the closer look at the value-driven strategy agile coaching card. And then in short, we look at the different field that's on the card. And then what exactly can we do with it? So there are actually different things we can do with it. So for instance, for agile coaches, and then that can be used for strategic planning. So you can use a couple cards at a time even. And if you work with a group of agile coaches, and now many companies now have a lean agile center of excellence, agile coaching team, agile coaching group. So you can use it together, and based on your interest, your domain knowledge, always remember what you know, what you don't know, and what you should be asking for help with, and decide who will be focusing on what. And then also decide how to step by step help improve this organization. So therefore, the first application would be for agile coaches like us. And then the second one could be for managers or leaders, we call, and to better use agile coaches' capability. So for me, given the fact that I work with different agile coaches from different culture, different country, and it's a global symptom, unfortunately, many companies are hiring agile coaches, Scrum masters, and if you Google, there are many. And then they first don't know what competence they should be looking for. And second thing, they don't really know how to utilize their capability either. So therefore, this can be served as a guidance for some organization I'm working with, and the manager will use this to strategic plan, to actually think about it. This is the situation that we have. They know very well what the situation they're working with, and they start to think about, okay, and potentially, what type of competence, capability that can be helpful. So therefore, it can be used for managers and leaders to start to think about and to utilize Agile coaches' capability. And then the next one could potentially be used by managers and Agile coaches to have a very nice conversation, to align on strategy, to align on expectation. And then, as we know, for instance, no matter how good you are as an Agile coach, you go into an organization, and then the manager is expecting you to be, although you're called Agile coach, and in his head, his perception is just Agile consultant. And then you're going in, and if you're not really evaluating and not balancing very well, assume you're going in leaning a lot on professional coaching skill, which is also another trend in our global community. Many Agile coaches are going into professional coaching training, have a little bit trouble to actually balance. So I lean very much on professional coaching training. Surely, I will piss him off. Expectations, mismatch. So therefore, with this card can help manager and Agile coaches to have a nice conversation, to align on strategy, expectation, and how to help improve the organization. And so therefore, that's the three common applications that I have been working with. And then now let's take a look at the summary. So remember, I said as a coach is very important for me that after the time you spend with me, you could start to reflect and see how could this help you, and how could you start to use it and start to benefit from it. So now if we take a look at summary, I hope you remember all the different playgrounds or clouds, if you want to call it, which is quite fine also. And then also I hope that you remember what's on the 5 different skills on the balancing board. So then we're going to do constantly evaluating. So now if we summarize, so not only we balance continuously because organization is a system. First, the system itself, it evolves. Second thing, the organization is normally big. At least for me, normally I work with large company. So therefore, we have to constantly evaluate with value in mind, prioritize on product, business, and strategy so that we can have very high performing teams building, instead of great product. If we're not careful enough, maybe they will actually end up building bad product, actually couldn't be sold even. So therefore, very important, always focusing on value-driven strategy. So therefore, balancing on the board and constantly evaluate, and then be honest, be open, and be curious to learn. And so I truly love Agile coaching because it has been a great journey of continuous learning. So therefore, that's, very important to think about and to balance. And additionally, as an Agile coach, it's also very important. You don't quite see the heart of the two coaches. However, it's very important to have a very big heart. Why? Because there will be frustrations. It's not to say, well, it's like black and white. Why don't they understand? Agile coaches work with people. So when we have one person, complexity is very small, and we have more and more people, there's more complexity. So therefore, there will be frustrations. And so therefore, with that being said, we need to continuously evaluate and then think about how can we generate more value, even more value, and to generate some positive energy to help generate some positivity. So therefore, I also have this, the heart for Agile coach is a 3P. So we have to be patient, because we need to be patient. It's not to say, well, we're going to do impediment Kanban board. Everything is just going to be better tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's going to take time, and there will be changes in the organization. And later, for instance, the head of the organization may change, and the progress may be reset, and then you need to work with it again. So patience, very important. And positivity, bring in some positive energy and bring some confidence in where we are going, and the trust, to build that trust, and also perseverance, because there will be time you might be bumping your head on the wall, and then that you will just gradually think about strategy, and you will be getting there. And then at Agile 100, when we're speaking, they asked me to come up with a quote. So this is what I have, just to highlight the importance of value-driven strategy. So the reason I come up with the quote is because I mentor Agile coaches, and then normally I have a sort of a 1 hour, informal chat, and just to understand where the candidate is. And then quite many of them, again, globally. And then when I ask them, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing well. And then, okay, great. And what makes you say you're doing well when you're coaching the organization? And then the answer normally would be, yeah, my teams are running this, we're doing this, and then the product owner this and this. And then I ask, what else? And normally the answer is very, very short. So therefore, the quote that I have is, without value-driven strategy, your excellent teams can only be so good. So we truly need the value and truly need the business value and to help the organization to improve. And then, thank you so much for attending this session. And then I think about Agile product organization all the time. So though I'm living in Stockholm in Sweden, however, I'm just an email away. So therefore, please feel free and feel very invited to reach me for about, value-driven strategy and about product, how to use it in organization and transformation, anything related to that topic. So you're very much invited to reach out to me. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Evelyn. We have a few minutes left to answer the question we received. So I will go in the Q&A section. And first question, do you have a repository of tools, practices, and domain knowledge to help analyze the situation? So for example, lack of stakeholder management, lack of product strategy, and prioritization alignment.
Okay, great. Yeah, certainly yes, because that's a very important part. The reason actually this year, the previous conference where I spoke at, I was gradually going into the topic because it's very important, because I see a trend. We're moving a lot into professional coaching, facilitating, and then at the same time, the domain knowledge is very important. So therefore, that will be an area that first, for instance, I collect, everything I learn. I make a collection of things. So then I start to evaluate, given the context, what would be a good tool? Could be tools and practices that could help this organization. And then, so therefore, that normally I call this, you see, on the balancing board, these are the skills. However, then it's a domain knowledge to help you to evaluate whether this playground that I think I should be focusing on, do I have enough domain knowledge to do so? So definitely that'll be very important. Yeah.
Also, can you share the presentation document at the end of the conference?
Of course, yes. Yes.
Great. So we'll make it available to the attendees. Next question. Can you talk about Wardley mapping and its use in organizational transformation?
That's actually where did this question come from, because I did not mention that in the example scenario. Could I get a little bit background information, like what is the situation, why you would like to use it?
Yeah, so the person entered the question anonymously, but if they want to put their name in the chat, I can definitely bring them on stage with you to clarify. So maybe we can move to another question and get back to it if the person wants to come on stage. The next question is, do you share or even create the coaching card with your clients? Or is it something that's just to structure your work, to create your own coaching strategy?
Okay, that's a very good question. So normally I would normally do two things. One thing I do is that because when I started to work with Agile coaching in 2009, I was really working very hard to grow myself. Then I was given the challenge to grow more coaches within Ericsson. So I started to grow more coaches from 2011 already, although I was still on my own learning journey. So with that being said, that normally two things I do with my clients. The first scenario, normally what I do, which I prefer, is that to help the company to grow their own coaching capability internally. So that, in short, I can leave. Yeah. So that with internal coaching capability, they can grow. So what I do in that case is that I work with my coachee or my mentee in this my client side. Normally, I will ask them to say, for the size of this organization, I would like to work with a few candidates so that they can grow, and that will be part of our agreement. So in that case, I work with them closely on the card, how to use it, what will be the full basket of tools potentially you can use given this situation, what would be a good tool to use. So that will be the first scenario. Second scenario will be I go in as more just by myself as an agile coach. In that case, I don't quite share with my client what I'm actually doing. And then I will talk about it, but I more use it for my own strategic planning. So I want to evaluate. And of course, as you can imagine, I might come up with, let's say, 4 tools in my head. I start to evaluate which one would be better. So that will be more for my own thinking and then for my own planning purpose.
Next question is, what will be your definition of driven strategy? Are you talking from a value from the organization point or the value of the coaching point of view?
That is a great question. You see, I have been sort of changing the concept slightly, however, it's the same concept. Because if you think about it, it should be a lot. So when I talk with leaders, for instance, I was just speaking at an internal conference for an international company on investment management. So then it's a bunch of leaders. So what I did was I talk about the value-driven strategy at organization level. Then of course I mentioned that how to utilize your agile coaches to help you to do that. And then happens, for instance, now I'm talking about the agile coaches, and then how can we use value-driven strategy in our day-to-day coaching to help us do that strategic planning, to help us to stay focused. So in a way, the bottom of or you can see it as a three roots and tracks. And then just slightly, I might talk about it a bit differently at the end of the same concept. It should be aligned. Now I have one more question coming up. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, going back to the first question around the tools and practices and domain knowledge, is there a model that you can share or recommend?
I'm actually not quite sure about the question. So when I answered the first question about do I have a repository of tools, practices, and domain knowledge? So this is really based on my years of working. If I give you an example, you just pick randomly. For instance, Kanban. Back the days I was working in Ericsson, and then we did a survey back in 2014, and then to see what is the value of you using Kanban, and then globally. And then there was one value that's very clear, however far from being sufficient, is visualization. And when I have a face-to-face conversation, normally I ask what else, and that's it. And then therefore now if there are organizations doing that, and then you see they're using Kanban as a way, as a tool. So for me, it's more, okay, look at the whole system. So normally I say, first you come in, maybe you look at the, a particular part they brought in for, and what you do is you one step back, look at the whole system, and start to think about what potentially be a good concept, practice, and tools that can be helpful in this situation. For instance, start if they are using it only at team level, you can help them, for instance, using portfolio level Kanban, start to focus on the measuring of lead time, how to reduce, batch size, and how could you actually actively slice the size of the feature that are coming in, and start to limit number of work in progress. So all of these are different things you could decide to use, or a combination of things. So therefore, I don't quite have a model per se. So it's more over the years, I sort of my collection is getting bigger and bigger. So I hope that answered the last question.
I don't see anything else in the chat before.
Emily, can I ask you a question? You know, like somebody asked for the presentation. Do you have the URL or something? Is that something you can give me right after we've gone back on conversation mode?
I could probably save a copy in Dropbox and drop it in. Would that work?
Yeah, but it's not ready yet, huh? It's something later, or?
Yeah, I would just probably need the 2-3 minutes. Now I have another question.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all right. So then for the participant, this is something we will put in the archive eventually when we get the stuff from you, you know, like on our website. Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so do we have time to look at the last question?
Yes, we have another 5 minutes. So yeah, what is your recommendation to define Agile Coach Year objectives?
Okay, I tried also multitask. I actually have a link now. Can I share the link then first? Hold on. I have a link to the slides now. Dropbox link, but maybe not quite yet. I send it to chat. Would that work?
Yes, that's excellent.
Yeah, it worked. Okay, so I send it through the chat window. Then it probably, maybe, I'm not sure exactly. I think it's still generating, but it should be there. But the link is there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. Good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Let's look at the last one. What have you seen in terms of? No, this is the next one. And what is your recommendation to define Agile Coach Year objective? So. Are we talking about this is about the yearly goal setting and performance review, if I understand that right? Could somebody clarify a little bit?
We could ask Ronald to come on stage and explain his question. Is that correct?
Yeah.
For evaluation at the end of the years. Yep. Can you hear me?
No.
Hi, Evelyn. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Just now I did not.
Okay. Yes. Basically, my question is related to how we can define year objective for evaluation at the end of the year, because it's very the subject is very hard to define numbers. So for people working for companies, how we can define some objectives based in PKIs or some numbers.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, now let me talk about this. So this is actually one of the many triggers for me to start to work with this card, because for Agile coaches, I'm coaching. One of the common challenge that they have is that every year they have to have this performance review with their managers. And the thing is that normally I work with coaches working in large organizations. And then what happened is that then the common topic is that, you know, they have no idea how to measure me. Some managers are more have more trust on the coach. Is more, you decide what you want to work with. However, some others more, what is the value? Actually, one of the coaches I'm coaching in UK, and she actually just shared a few weeks ago, said that their top-level executives send a survey to the whole organization to ask for the value of having Agile coaches in the organization. As you can see, sending a very not so pleasant message to the Agile coaches. So therefore, it's a common topic. And then, so that's also one of the reasons I have this card. So this card, you could actually use it to work with the manager and then start to actually talk about, now, for instance, assume this is January now, I'm going to work with you. And then what are the parts? This is what I see. And what are the parts you would like to focus on? What would you like to see from a business agility perspective? So having that conversation and to have that sort of goal setting session. And that is great for many purposes. So the first one is to help manager. That's opportunity, almost like education for the manager. It's not to just execute the Scrum, have a board up and running, everything just will be great tomorrow. So that's a good education for the manager. Start to, help them to start to think about what do we actually want to achieve. Start to trigger their discussion with even their maybe upper management. And so that is one good purpose of using it from the manager perspective. And for ourselves as Agile coaches, that's also very good as well. Because once we sorted out, the alignment with the manager, and then we are both, we're aligned. So that is definitely bring in a lot of value for pretty much all parties in the picture. So that's why you could use it also for performance goal setting purpose and for alignment, and also for instance, every 2 months also, depends of course on the size of the organization, how fast we'll be able to see the results, right? And so therefore in a month, 2 months, or a quarter, then we can sit down and revisit and talk about it again. And then I can come back with a few cards again. This is what I see, what I plan to do, and then what are the things that you feel that echoes with your thoughts. So that can be used for that purpose.